Thank you, Rajveer, for giving me this opportunity on behalf of CRFC to introduce Shri Deepak Kumar to the today's participants of the webinar on EU taxonomy for sustainable activities. Deepak Kumar, presently AGM Assistant General Manager in Union Bank of India, is FRM, SCR, and pursuing still higher doctorate in sustainability and climate risk management. He comes from the risk management background in the senior management of the Union Bank of India, where he is having his expertise and extending the support for the formulation of risk framework. Then with his business acumen and his experience, he is very well integrating the business models and the business practices with the risk management. So we can say sort of integrated business and risk management at his hands. And now for the today's subject of the EU taxonomy, which is really a very sincere and serious step put forward by the European Union on classification of environmentally sustainable economic activities, the listing thereof, so that it plays an important role in the coming time to scale up the sustainable investment and implement the European Green Deal. With this brief introduction, not taking much time between the main speaker and the subject to be heard from him and be learned from him, I hand it over to Shri Deepak Kumar by extending a very warm welcome to CRFC. Over to Deepak Kumar, please.
Thank you, sir. I hope I am audible.
Yes, please.
Yes. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. So from wherever you are connecting, so I welcome you all for this webinar on taxonomy, and we will be focusing mainly on EU taxonomy because that is the most developed taxonomy and most mature taxonomy as of now in the entire world. So in this presentation, what we are going to do today is we will be studying what is meant by taxonomy and overview of international practices that that has evolved for sustainable taxonomy, and then we will be seeing EU taxonomy in detail. Afterwards, we will also touch upon ISSB proposed taxonomy. Whether to say that as taxonomy or not, that it's debatable, but we will see that and what is the effort ISSB has taken towards that, and we will also touch upon greenwashing. Okay. So first of all, let's start with what is sustainable finance taxonomy. So basically, what has happened over a period of time is that green and sustainable financial market has experienced exponential growth over last few years. And because of this, sustainability related or sustainable theme related financial products has become very important. And there are a lot of products which has come up in the form of bonds or in the form of loans and other products also, and it has become very important part of investment landscape. So with regard to that, there has been development of taxonomy also to cater to these developments, to identify that whether they are actually sustainable or not. So what is meant by actually sustainable? So for that, this taxonomy development has happened, so that it would bring clarity and transparency in this entire process to the financial market participants. And also, it will help the participants in qualifying or prioritizing their investments across economic activities. So this is the brief background with which this taxonomy development has happened. And in this, the European Union was not the only one. There has been many developments across the world. In fact, from countries like Mongolia and South Africa also, they have contributed to development of their own taxonomy. In fact, Canada is uniquely positioned because there this taxonomy development has happened through involvement of private sector. So what happens is that with this taxonomy, it helps to align them with the whatever global commitments which has happened in terms of Paris Agreement or in terms of UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that is one advantage of taxonomy, and also it also helps align with the investment with the national commitments which any country has made in terms of Paris Agreement. So this is the brief background of what is meant by taxonomy and why there is a need for taxonomy to develop. Now coming to taxonomy as a classification tool, why it is called a classification tool? So it is called a classification tool because it helps investors and companies to make informed investment decisions for different economic activities. So it basically tries to identify economic activities into sustainable or not sustainable. So basically it gives some clarity to the market that what is sustainable in terms of green or social issues, or when we come across in the latter part of presentation, we will see that in fact green is also not pure green. So green is also classified into dark green, light green, and the opposite of green is brown. So these are the kind of classifications which are happening, and so that it gives clarity to the company as well as the investor also. Then when it comes to features of a taxonomy, so what are the characteristics of a taxonomy? So basically it includes a set of criteria. It can be technical also, or it can be a qualitative also. So which defines economic factors which make any activity sustainable, green, or social. So it can be a framework that could prove to be making anything structured or guarantee market integrity. So for example, taxonomy is not a rigid classification. It is a flexible classification tool. So it adapts in different investment styles and strategies. Also, it is based upon latest industry and scientific experience. So in fact, taxonomy has to be dynamic. So it has to evolve over a period of time according to the changes in technology, science, and industry and data. So this is what a taxonomy is meant to be, and what a taxonomy should not be. So it is not guarantee that this investment is a good investment, okay, in terms of potential gain. So what a taxonomy does is that it gives certain kind of comfort that this investment is good for environment or for social, but it does not guarantee that it will lead to financial performance. So that is one misconception which has to be cleared, that what is sustainable means that is financially performing well. So a taxonomy does not guarantee that. It only tells that what is environmentally or socially performing, and also it is not inflexible or static. So it is dynamic. Then it comes to types of taxonomy. So we have got, as I told you, there are three types. So green, social, and brown. So green, as we know, it focuses on green activity. So it has got different or complex granularity, scope, criteria, and objectives which differ. And then we have got social taxonomy also. So it focuses on positive contribution to society. And then it has got two classifications. First one is called substantial contribution, and another is called do not significant harm. So it is also known as DNSS. So this is one term which has been used exclusively by EU taxonomy. And there is another taxonomy which is being developed, is brown or transition taxonomy. So in terms of brown or transition economy, transition taxonomy, it mainly caters to those industries which are more polluting, and this gives them certain this gives a standards to those economic activities to improve over a period of time. So once again, what is meant by green? So green is pure green activities, or activities that are considered unconditionally green. So there is no doubt in that. So whenever whenever any taxonomy tells that it is green, so there is no doubt. So that it will positively contribute to the environmental objective, which has been covered by that taxonomy. And about granularity, scope, criteria, and environmental objective, so these can vary very greatly. So European Union has come up with green taxonomy, and other jurisdiction has also come up. So in terms of green, there is one international organization called Climate Bond Initiative. So if you go through their site, they have got different standards for green bonds, and those are being adopted all over the world. So that is one organization which has, apart from EU, which has worked extensively in terms of green taxonomy. Similarly, in terms of social taxonomy, as I told you, there are two parts: a substantial contribution and DNSH. So there are countries like I think South Africa has come up with a social taxonomy, and in fact they have clubbed their taxonomy with the United Nations SDGs. So there has been a lot of developments on social taxonomy part also, and EU has also come up with social taxonomy. And apart from that, when it comes to brand taxonomy, then for brown, as I told you, so EU is working on that. And there are other organizations also and several technical bodies which are working for EU taxonomy, for brown taxonomy. Then comes the question that why we should have a taxonomy. So the reason is that it gives a common language which will be same for investors, issuers, policymakers, and the regulations. So it will not be subject to interpretation. So whatever green is green for everyone, whatever brown, that means it is brown for everyone. Similarly, it translates the Paris Agreement and SDGs. So whenever any economic activity happens, so it quantifies that how it is going to impact that economic activity's contribution to Paris Agreement. So basically what it does is that it puts environmental data into economic context. So we are able to quantify that how that activity is going to impact the environment. Then apart from that, it also saves time for any company as well as for investors. So whenever any investor is investing in any fund or in any equity, then they will come to know that what percentage of that fund is green. So that is one part. And then it also caters to different investment styles. So for example, there may be people who may be interested in 100% green, maybe people who may be interested in some 50% green. So it caters to all, and it also avoids reputational risk, so that because it helps companies to quantify what is the level of green, or the funds to quantify that what is the percentage of green. So so that quantification helps them to be transparent in their sustainability effort. And overall, it also rewards the companies because it helps them in adopting better technologies and moving from brown to green. So these are the main advantages of a taxonomy. That is why a taxonomy is important. So overall, whatever misconception is there regarding sustainability or classification of any investment or classification of any economic activity, or whatever is below the sun is sustainable or not in terms of any financial product or non-financial activity. So taxonomy clears that misconception, and it codifies for everyone. Now coming to EU sustainable finance taxonomy. So basically there are 6 environmental objectives. So first one is climate change mitigation. So this we all know that what is meant by climate change mitigation. Then second one is climate change adaptation. Third is sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources. Fourth one is transition to a circular economy. Fifth one is pollution prevention and control. And sixth one is protection of healthy ecosystems. So these are the 6 environmental objectives which EU has put up. So which any sustainable activity or which EU sustainable finance taxonomy is going to cater. So basically, The idea behind these objectives is that anything can be identified as sustainable if it helps in achieving one of these six objectives. So that is the first part. So if any economic activity is going to achieve one of these six objectives, then that economic activity will be classified as sustainable, and also it should not hamper the other five activities. So that is another criteria. And then there are certain benchmarks or certain safeguards which they have put, so it should cater to those. So this is the whole idea behind the EU taxonomy. First one is that substantially contribute, as I told you, that it should contribute to at least one of the environmental objectives. So among all those six, at least one has to be achieved, and it should not significant harm to any of the other five, and it should meet minimum safeguards. So this is the whole objective of EU taxonomy. So basically, it can be treated as a dictionary tool. So what it does is that it provides clarity that what is environmental sustainable activity and under which circumstances. Okay. And then also it is a measuring tool. So what it does is that it measures the degree of sustainability in any investment of companies' activities, and it allows consistent reporting. So basically, it helps in comparing apples to apples, and it can be also treated as a transition tool. And as I told you, it is a policy tool which helps in streamlining the policy towards a greener economy. And it is a dynamic tool because for each of their activity, these standards are getting updated regularly. So that is how it is dynamic. So overview of EU taxonomy is that it is basically a green classification system. So what it does is that it classifies any economic activity, that whether it is green or not. And so the idea is that it should meet European Union's overall climate and environmental objective. So, and what it does is that what is a specific economic activity and what is the investment purpose for any economic activity. So it tries to identify that. So it identifies green or economic sustainable as the one which substantially contribute to at least one of the EU's climate and environmental objectives. So those six objectives are the one, and it should not significantly harm any of these objectives. So basically in this taxonomy, there are different delegated acts. So what are those delegated acts? So those acts set clear criteria or for the activities to define or to mark them that whether they substantially contribute or whether they do not make significant harm. So it is called DNSS, do no significant harm. So these delegated acts have those criteria. So basically, EU sustainability taxonomy helps in creating a transparency tools. So it introduces mandatory disclosure obligations so that companies disclose their share of taxonomy aligned activities. So as we will see in the later slides, so each company or each financial and non-financial company has to disclose that what is the percentage of taxonomy aligned activity which they have done, and what is the percentage of green in that. So basically it helps in that disclosure, and it helps in comparison of companies and investment portfolios. So as I told you, it helps in comparing apples to apples. Also, it helps companies to plan their climate and environmental transition and raise finance. So those who can who raise finance for their transition, or to raise or to increase the percentage of their green component, so they get rewarded, and they also get better rates from their respective lenders. So it helps in raising finance for them, and it also helps whole of European Union in designing credible green financial products. So when it comes to development of sustainable finance taxonomy, and when everything is clearly demarcated, everything is clearly documented, codified, then there will not be any ambiguity in development of sustainable financial products. So that is the whole objective which EU taxonomy is going to achieve. So it will help in developing a green financial product system in the Europe. And what it is not is that, which also EU taxonomy has clarified, it is that it is not a mandatory list of economic activities for investors. So there may be certain economic activities which may not be incorporated in their delegated acts. So it does not mean that that activity is significantly harming or it is not green. So it may be green or it may not cause significant harm. But if any company thinks that activity has not been included and it is useful for the climate overall and it is for environment, then in that case they can disclose that under narrative disclosures. So that is one part which EU taxonomy has clarified, that if any activity is not coming, it does not mean that it should be classified as not sustainable. So that is generally a misconception where people think that if any activity is not coming under EU taxonomy, so that is not sustainable. Then apart from that, we have seen the disclosure part. So in disclosures also, these activities are to be disclosed. So whenever any activity which has not come under taxonomy, so once it gets disclosed, so under narratives, they can put their justification that what is the usefulness of that activity and how that activity is impacting the climate. So that may not be quantified, but that can be disclosed. Then these are the taxonomy benefits for investors. So it helps in expressing investment preferences. Then it helps in selecting holdings. It also, as I told you, it will help in designing green financial products. Then it measures the environmental performance of a security or a product, and also it helps in engaging with the investors. And apart from this, EU has also developed an IT tool, so which helps in facilitating the user to identify the activity and to see that whether that activity is aligned with the EU sustainable taxonomy or not. So that tool is also available at EU's taxonomy website. So that is also very useful tool. Disclosure part I have already told. So this taxonomy is integrated with the disclosures which EU has come up. So basically in European Union, there are two types of concepts. So the first part is called as non-financial reporting directive. So now it is called, earlier it was NFRD, now it is called CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So this is the reporting regime which companies has to follow. So this is a comprehensive reporting framework, and there is a concept called Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation (SFDR). So this has also come up, and apart from that, EU taxonomy. So these are the three things which any company in Europe has to follow for their disclosures. So under their disclosures, companies have to follow EU taxonomy mandatorily. So it applies to all non-financial as well as for financial firms. And any sustainable investment can be claimed only if it caters to the EU taxonomy. This is the guidance to non-financial companies. So what a non-financial company can also do is that they can identify their activity and they can identify what is the green component in that, and based upon that they can disclose, and that disclosure has to be in line with SFRD. So apart from development of EU taxonomy, the other benefit which it will lead is that the development of debt and lending related products will become very robust, because the companies which will be transitioning to a greener economy. So in that case, they will have incentive, because the lenders who would be investing in those transitions, so their investment or their loan would be also classified as green. And then whatever capex which company is doing, so that capex can also be classified as green, and overall it will also lead to a development of other financial products based upon that green classification. And this is how this percentage is computed. So for example, if there are two companies and here in this example there are three companies, so there are different percentages. So overall for that portfolio, the overall weightage is computed, and then that overall weightage is told as green for overall that portfolio. Here in this example, there is an utility company. So if for an utility company, if it is doing an activity which can be classified as green, so that will be treated as 100% green. And if any activity is there which is not classified as green, then that will not be treated as green. And over a period of time, so whatever investment it makes to make its other activities as green, so that will be treated for transition. And when that threshold is achieved, so then that can be classified as green. And this is the guidance to financial market participants. So in terms of equities and in terms of fixed income also, so whatever percentage of green component is there, that has to come up. So the other data points which can be seen is a percentage of investment in capex, then percentage of operating expenses. So those can also be seen whether those are green or not. So those are the data points which are seen. And overall in that bond also, if entire portfolio is green aligned, or a substantial part is green aligned, and what is the percentage which is green aligned, that is also seen. Here this concept gives do no significant harm. So in this concept, it caters to both qualitative as well as the quantitative matrices. So there are various thresholds which has been developed for different economic activities, and for those thresholds, once those companies achieve that, and whatever qualitative frameworks are there, if they achieve, then only those activities can be classified as do no significant harm. Then this is the guidance for non-financial companies. Again, as I told, so for any of the activities of a non-financial company, for each activity, it has to identify that what is the percentage it is achieving, whether it is green or not. And if it is not green, then what is the transition plan for that activity? So, and how much it caters to that activity. Also, for any of non-financial company, whatever investments that are being made in capex, so those investments has to be monitored. So whether those investments are related to development of some development of some activity, or some activity which will lead to overall green or not. So whether it is related to transition or it is just a continuation of as it is. If it is related to transition, then it can be considered as something which is contributing to green. If it is not related to transition, then it cannot be considered as something related to green. So that entire capital expenditure of non-financial companies has to be seen, and based upon that, it is to be monitored. Then EU sustainable taxonomy has also led to development of EU green bonds. So it defines the projects, whether they are green or not. So for that also, they have specified that what kind of projects which can be treated as green. Then they have come up with green bond framework. So that entire framework uh, has got uh, standards for allocation, reporting, impact, and verification. And for verification, it has to be done by accredited external verifier. There are two types of verification which has to be done, whether it caters to green bond framework or not, and how it has been allocated. And also there is the concept of mandatory reporting here. So there has to be reporting of that how the funds has been allocated, and then what is the impact of those funds. Then steps to calculate taxonomy exposure. So in this, it has to be identified that the activities which are being conducted by the company, so issuer or covered by the financial product. So whether they are eligible or not, then for each activity, it has to be assessed whether the company or issuer meets the relevant criteria for a sustainable contribution. So these criteria has for each activity has come under delegated acts. Then they have to verify that D and SH, do no significant harm criteria, are being met by issuer. So investors using the taxonomy most likely use a due diligence like process for reviewing the performance of underlying investees. Also, due diligence has to be conducted to avoid any violation to the social minimum safeguards stipulated in taxonomy regulation. So under Article 13 of taxonomy regulation, they have created a certain minimum safeguards which should not be violated. So under three criteria which any economic activity has to fulfill. So the first one was that it has to be one among the six which we have seen earlier. The second one was that it should not harm to the other five. And the third one is that it should cater to the minimum safeguards which has been stipulated in the taxonomy regulation. So this is one of the major important requirement under EU sustainable taxonomy. And also we have to calculate the alignment of investment with the taxonomy and prepare the disclosures for investment at product level. So now coming to the concept that how this taxonomy will help companies raise capital. So here we have taken two examples. First one is related to energy sector, and the second one is related to manufacturing sector. So for example, if there is a coal energy firm, so which has been traditionally using coal as the source of energy for production of electricity. So in that case, that company can decide to go for power generation through some renewable sources and can raise funds which will be eligible under the taxonomy, and it will also be helpful for the banks or the other investors, or if it raises through bonds, then in that case it will be also eligible under EU green bond standards. And then investors will understand this strategy, and they will also those investors who want to invest in taxonomy aligned investments, so they will also invest in such kind of projects or bonds. Another example is manufacturing sector. So here we have taken an example of aluminum manufacturer which is looking for some capital to improve the performance of its manufacturing facility. So in this case, the company can get a green loan from a bank for the expenditure. So this expenditure will be mainly capex to bring the performance of the facility in line with the criteria of the taxonomy. So once the facility meets the taxonomy criteria, so in that case, the shares of the company can be included as a green equity fund. So it will be helpful for the financial companies also, which will be investing in the equity of that company. So this is how taxonomy is going to help in companies raise capital. Then comes the concept that what makes a substantive contribution to climate change. So basically the activities that are already low carbon. So there are activities, for example, afforestation is there, then zero emission transport, then near to zero carbon electricity. So these are activities which are identified as activities that are already low carbon. So, and they are compatible with 2050 net zero carbon economy. So they are likely to be stable and long term, and these type of activities are going to be substantive contribution to climate change. There are activities that contribute to a transition to a zero or net zero emission economy. So example of those are building renovations, which will help making buildings more green. Then electricity generation, where it is less than 100 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour. Then for cars, if it is less than 50 gram CO2 per kilometer. So these activities are the activities which are going to contribute to a transition to a zero net emission. So the first one was that those activities which are already considered as green. The second one is one which is substantially reducing the emission, carbon emission from the earlier levels to the present level. And the third one is that activities that enable those two which we have discussed earlier. So for example, manufacturing of wind turbines. So wind turbine will be used in creation of renewable power which will be zero emission. So any activity which manufactures wind turbine, so although it will be contributing something to the pollution, but this activity can be considered as activity which is making substantial contribution, because it is helping in creating wind turbines, which is going to help in generation of renewable power. So these are the activities which are also considered under substantial contribution to climate change. So this three concept has been the whole and soul of EU taxonomy, to identify any activity which is going to make substantial contribution to climate change or not. Then coming to IASB taxonomy, so where it differs from EU taxonomy. So EU taxonomy is very comprehensive. So they are talking about each economic activity, and for those activity, whether they are making substantial contribution to green or not. So for that, they have put the entire standards. So that is the idea behind EU taxonomy. But in the proposed ISSB taxonomy, what they are talking about is that the disclosures which are going to come up by ISSB, so how those disclosures can be codified so that it will improve the comparability of those disclosures, and also it will improve the transparency of those disclosures, so that anybody would be able to check that what is the level of change in that disclosure over a period of time for a company, or can compare between two different companies, or can compare between different industries. So this is what ISSB taxonomy is going to do. So it has got very limited purpose, but they have also termed it as taxonomy. So why it is called taxonomy is because it is codifying something. So anything which is going to codify something is called taxonomy. So in terms of that, this is called ISSB taxonomy. So these are the guidelines, or these are the basically ideas behind which this ISSB taxonomy has been defined. So basically, it will be separate for different industries, and also there would be different standards for core content as well as for disclosure standards. Then for each of the elements of TCFD, that is governance, then strategy, risk, and metrics and targets, there would be separate taxonomy for that. And for the disclosures which are more narrative in nature, they will also try to make those disclosures more specific, so that there will not be any much ambiguity in those narratives as well. And it will try to capture information between different types of disclosures. So this is the whole idea behind which ISSB taxonomy is working, and the draft paper has already come up, and final guidelines may come up by 23 mid. So once that come up, so whatever disclosures which ISSB compliant any company will be doing. So we will be able to compare that and across industries as well as for a company across periods. Then coming to the concept of greenwashing. So greenwashing, as my previous speaker has already told, so it is a concept where anything which is not green or which is not catering to the objective for which it has been named, but it is being sold as green. So to overcome greenwashing, what regulators do is that generally they put some penalty, and they also come up with the taxonomy. So EU taxonomy is one thing which will help in eradicating greenwashing. In fact, in Europe, we have seen a lot of regulators are coming up heavily on banks and other financial institutions which are involved in greenwashing and which are marking their products as green, even though they are not green compliant. So with EU taxonomy and with other taxonomies, this greenwashing concept will be tackled. So this is the overall idea behind EU taxonomy and overall development of taxonomies around the world. So to conclude, basically we have got three types of taxonomies. One is green, another is social, and third is brown. So for green, EU has done a lot of work. So basically they have got three criteria. So they have identified 6 economic activities, and for those 6 economic activities, number one is that it should meet one of those economic activities criteria. Number two is that it should not harm to the other 5. And number 3 is that they have set some minimum standards. So that has to be made. And also for each of these economic activities, they have defined delegated acts. And EU taxonomy over a period of time for last 2-3 years, it is being developed, and it has come up now very well. And it is being used extensively in Europe, and it has led to development of an entire financial system where this codification of green has happened. So that kind of ambiguity which was earlier there, whether everyone used to label their product as green or not green, or they used to missell their product, and that kind of transparency which is being developed because of EU taxonomy is tremendous. And overall, in my view, that whatever step which EU has taken in terms of EU taxonomy, so that will come up in most of the countries as well. And then this entire ecosystem of identifying whatever capex is being done and whatever economic activity which is being undertaken by the non-financial firms, or whatever investments which financial firms are making. So that codification of that will lead to a lot of standardization of entire this data collection process and this entire investment cycle. So that will also lead to a development of entire new market for banks as well as for data vendors. So that was from my side on EU taxonomy. So any questions in this regard?
Deepaki, this is Shailendra. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, for a very detailed presentation. One question I had, you said in the beginning that, even countries like Mongolia,
Yes.
have a framework. Where is India on this taxonomy part? I know that there have been discussions, but there is no India-specific taxonomy yet, right?
No. In fact, in India, government of India has formed a certain committee in this regard.
Yeah.
But what is the fate of that committee, whether they have submitted a report or not, so that is not clear. In fact, our neighbors like Bangladesh has also worked extensively on this taxonomy part. And in fact, a lot of Asian countries, they have done substantial work on this. In fact, Japan and Singapore is very in advanced stages on this. And in fact, they are working on taxonomy for Asian countries.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I thought it was. And in fact, the reason I asked that question is, for all of us to consider that this is a huge gap, in India as a market. I suspect, and Deepakji, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think even the United States has a taxonomy.
No.
They don't. So,
No.
So this is like, two of the biggest sort of emitters are without taxonomy frameworks. And so for us as a group, this could be an area that we can focus on or help or push the agenda forward. This is a big gap. There's a lot of interest in green bonds and things like that. And personally, I think it can be a very good way to raise capital. But it's still very, very nascent in India and US,
This is fantastic, Deepak. I know, I think you have covered very extensively. I think right from, giving the concept and the use, absolutely fabulous question. I think I like it so much.
Hello, can you hear me? Siddharth here.
Yes, Siddharth.
Hello. Oh, good. Okay. So, Namaste, Deepakji. Thank you so much for this presentation. I was actually unaware of this this particular field of sustainable finance, the taxonomy part. So, thank you. This was completely new for me. I had one question particularly about the one where you mentioned where electricity generation or CO2 emissions from electricity generation has to be less than 100 grams per kilowatt hour. Now, for our country, that number of CO2 emissions is almost at 900 grams per kilowatt hour. So almost about 9 to 10 times higher than what is expected in the taxonomy framework. So does that mean that our investments in our country would be excluded or are ineligible for such kind of sustainable finance?
Actually, if we copy EU taxonomy as it is, then it may be ineligible. But what is happening is that each country is in different stages of their development, and that's where this one taxonomy for entire world cannot happen. This concept comes. So, for example, as you told about this, so similarly about coal also. So there are a lot of discrepancies. Then for nuclear power also, there are a lot of discussions which are going on around the world that whether it is green or not green. So it all depends upon the stage of development that country is in. So India cannot copy European Union taxonomy as it is. So when India decides to develop its own taxonomy, so then that threshold which they have put for their, so that threshold would be kept lower for in this case higher for India. So when it comes to defining threshold for us.
So if I may ask a follow-up question on that. So are you suggesting that if we don't raise our voices today, we'll be forced to follow whatever the international taxonomy standards are, where most of the countries might converge? The benchmarks or the threshold limits that you are suggesting. If we don't act today, then we'll be forced to agree to or accept some of their international standards. Is that what you're saying?
Not exactly, but when it comes to those technical standards, so again, for those technical standards, there would be certain leeway for different countries. So whenever, if any one taxonomy for entire world comes up, so in that case, there would be certain leeway for different countries. But when it comes to that, this concept, this entire concept, there may be, for example, there may be some 70 to 80% cases where countries may converse. They may agree that 80% of things we will agree, and for 20% of things, it will be left to that national regulator to decide that what is acceptable for them, and then based upon that, for example, in terms of Paris Agreement, where everyone has been given target, everyone has given their target voluntarily. So it may be left to those countries that to what extent they will achieve those targets. So similarly, for technical concepts also, it can be left to those countries.
Okay, so since sustainable finance is likely to come from outside,
yes.
So are you saying that when foreign finances or foreign investors come to India to invest in this, then they should likely follow the taxonomy that we would develop here locally and not stick to their country standards?
No. So in case if any company is originating from EU, okay, and they are investing in India, okay, so for their home regulation, they cannot classify something which India follows. So they have to follow their follow their home regulations, their EU regulations. They will have to follow. So again, that won't be helpful for India to attract. So again, so that is one. So that will be one incentive for India to also follow those EU taxonomy to bring in more investors from EU and follow their standard.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that answer.
So just to add on to Siddharth's question, if I can ask one question, as we can see that Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation (SFDR), it is very categorical in terms of who is investing in the EU. So if any major firm is investing in EU, and they need to abide by that. So basis that, so if we are developing anything in Indian context, just like I have posted in WhatsApp one of the RBI discussion paper, which was plotted in 27th of April or May something, I don't remember the date. So basis that, so if anything is coming up in the country itself, so first the local regulation should prevail first, then the global regulation should be something secondary.
True, but when we expect any investment from Europe, and any investor who is residing in Europe, whose company is founded in Europe, and whose funds are coming from Europe, so once they want to invest in India, they will follow their guidelines. But if any Indian investor is there, and if they want to invest in any Indian company, they will follow Indian guidelines. So it's up to us that which are the investors which we are targeting, and then based upon that, we will have to align our standards according to them.
Okay. So one last question in terms of EU taxonomy, what is the implication on Indian operations, Indian context? What is the implication of this renewed EU taxonomies, and whatever is coming up, what is the implication on us?
In terms of implication, as of now, it is not that much. So it is going to impact the companies which are there in, which are active in EU and which are listed there. So for them, it would be too much. But when it comes to their investments in different countries, so there they will have to disclose that. So in that case, we may fail because they will not be able to invest in such countries where if suppose if any fund is there which decides that they will invest in totally in those companies which are aligned to EU taxonomy. So in that case, those funds will not be investing in any company in India if those companies are not aligned to EU taxonomy.
Okay, sir. Again, sorry, but I have one more question that I need to have a follow up. You would have known about the BRSR, okay? The Business Responsibility Sustainable Reporting. There, no doubt, it is only applicable to top 1,000 listed companies as per the SEBI. But still, you can see the companies need to disclose who have invested in their portfolio. So if someone is investing in there, so BRSR is quite comprehensive in terms of what exactly the product you are offering, what exactly you are doing, that may be into finance sector or that may be into any product, FMCG, whatever that may be, because it is quite sector agnostic right now, to be very frank. At that context, if suppose any European investor is investing in any organization, and so whether it is not like that, BRSR is a step forward in terms of regulation in terms of Indian context as well.
No, so what I see about BRSR is, frankly, it is a step forward. What you said is correct, but it is a step forward which is about 4 or 5 years backwards when it comes to international market. So that is one thing. And the other thing is that BRSR, that format is very comprehensive, but there is no compulsion on the corporates to disclose. So even if a corporate decides for anything as not applicable and it discloses that BRSR on their website, then there is no concept of penalty from SEBI that you have not disclosed it correctly. So there is no concept of penalty here, and there is no shareholder activism which is there in foreign countries or developed countries. So that kind of activism is also not there. So BRSR per se is going to be a total failure. So in my personal view, so I don't know about others, but to make BRSR more relevant, what SEBI will have to do is that it will have to withdraw it immediately as soon as possible, and it will have to follow something sort of GRI standards or ISSB, whatever is being proposed. And you mark my words, in next 1 to 2 years, SEBI is going to implement either GRI or ISSB for all their listed companies.
Okay, thank you.
Deepak, again, Siddharth here. Please allow me this one follow-up question. So what you're suggesting is, unless see, the global north has kind of committed, at least promised about $100 billion of capital for climate mitigation and adaptation and things like that to the people who are actually suffering for it. Now, with these kind of taxonomies, it is a kind of a or at least it seems to me it's a kind of a tariff barrier for the flow of money that is supposed to come from the polluters to the ones who are the victims here. So the money is largely in the North America and in Europe. That money is largely even today, that money is largely being transferred between the global north. And that is somehow counted as money paid for common responsibilities and whatever common differential responsibilities. I'm sorry, I forget that nomenclature. But the point is this: so is this going to act as a deterrent for the companies in the global south to raise funds from these developed nations, and therefore we will see another round of additional tariffs for us to grow? I mean, we'll have to go through hoops to get that kind of finance then. Maybe that is the reason India is not too interested in doing something like this. Your comments, sir.
I do not see it that way because that 100 billion fund, that is still debatable. So what happened to that and what is their responsibility? So in my view, what I see is that what makes economic sense for a consumer, so that is going to prevail. So when it comes to this climate change, so as I was reading somewhere, so if it is not economical, so as a part of moral responsibility, I am not going to change my behavior, which is more climate compliant. So first thing is that any change which has to happen has to be more economical. So for example, when we see electric cars, so in terms of electric cars, it is now becoming more economical for them for consumers as compared to the other types of internal combustion engine. Or when it comes to green steel, so when it comes to green steel, then when it is making more economic sense, then it will become more relevant. When it comes to cement, so when that cement is more recyclable or it is more green, then it will become more economic. So when it comes to those kind of products, then this entire developing country and coupled with those kind of products will act as a huge market. So no one or no taxonomy, nothing can stop the flow of funds from developed countries to these developing countries. So because that market is going to be here. So that's how I see it. So whatever this global north-south discussion has been there, so that will be there. But what I see is that where that market is and how that market is making economic sense, so that fund will follow automatically. So in some way or other, even if any company is following EU taxonomy, and if they have to declare that okay, this is not EU taxonomy compliant, but if that is making economic sense to invest in India, they will definitely follow that route also.
Thank you, sir. That is more in line with the current practices, it seems. So again, thank you for that answer. Yes.
To end on a very positive note, I think in India, Deepak ji, you will appreciate that things have started coming to the blueprint of a way to become structured list of the activities. They may be isolatedly, doing certain things, banning some single-use plastics, coming the guidelines from the regulator in way of responsible banking, and the things like that. In our credit policy in banks, as you know, we come out with the negative list of the financing activities. So coming to a document called taxonomy, to look for a solution to that, maybe we are looking to have a, whenever we have asked for a solution, so we get an organization to do that. So maybe a taxonomy sort of thing is put under the charge of some central agency on the sustainability or something like that. As we have been normally been behind the, as you rightly said, the time clock compared to the West, we may be on the way to this. And I think the things like financing the thermal, being seized of the matter of the air pollution from the real estate sector, or the financing of, say, certain activities which are polluting, the pollution control boards, etc., doing certain things in isolation. But the coordinated approach to document a thing like taxonomy, I think it's a next way forward we have to look for. And these reports which have brought to the knowledge of the audience, like this EU taxonomy, are the documents to be emulated, to be put in our own context suitable to our economy. So I think positively we are on that matter. And now with the India gaining a worldwide position, a very strong position on the raising their voice on sustainability, I think future is good for a taxonomy for us also going forward.
Yes, sir. So what you said is true, sir. So basically where we fail is that generally when it comes to coordination, so we have got so many stakeholders. Yeah. So for example, we have got finance ministry, we have got environment and forest, we have got RBI, we have got SEBI, we have got IRDA. So when it comes to coordination among different
that is right. That's right.
There we fail. Otherwise, as an institution, everybody is capable. So that combined effort, when it is put, then we will be way ahead of this entire EU taxonomy or any other taxonomy.
Very right. To have a solution, we need an institution.
Yes.
So I think that's the way forward. So from CRFC, Rajveer, to please continue if there are more questions, and otherwise I think we request our representative to come. And Deepak ji, anything else you want to say from your side, or we go for the vote of thanks?
I think any other questions, sir?
Rajveer?
Sir, I don't think there's any other question, but if there is, we will reach out to you.
Yeah, fine.
Yes, sir. So I'll go ahead with the vote of thanks. So I would like to thank Deepak sir for the presentation on EU taxonomy. It was a great insight in EU, understanding the EU market and how we can integrate that into our economy. I would also like to thank CRFC for providing this opportunity. And I would like to thank Mr. Anand sir on giving an introduction about CRFC. And I would like to thank Shailendra sir for giving a brief insight into governance. And lastly, I would like to thank the attendees for joining this session on a weekend. Thank you so much.